To see it. Let's start, well, the Eurozone. There can be no doubt now that growth is finally taking hold and it's here to stay, right?
That's what we're hoping. What we've seen is back-to-back expansions of the manufacturing sector. We've seen growth hitting a 26-month high according to the PMI, but also what we've seen is this is not just one particular country which has reported growth this month. PMIs for all the nations covered moved higher with the exception of France, and only France and Greece are below that 50 expansion mark. So again, it's got a broad base as well.
So, I mean, is it here to stay then? I mean, is there any historical precedent for seeing an improvement like this only for it to falter again?
We have seen that since the global financial crisis, the odd patch where we've seen a little bit of a recovery and then it fade back. But again, those recoveries have been based very much on just one nation. What we're seeing here is a bit of a broader spectrum and the main drag, the periphery, signs that things are starting to stabilise there. So, hopeful.
Why, what's going on with France?
Well, France has been quite weak and muted for quite some time.
So have other countries.
So have other countries. But France, like in honesty, France has been very weak earlier in the year, and even though we saw it fall back into contraction after expanding briefly last month, its PMI is still at a much higher level than it was earlier in this year. And so even there, it's not as positive as it was last month, but it's not as negative as it was. So still, overall, heading in the right direction.
And taking the Eurozone as a whole, what sort of growth are we looking at now for Q3?
Well, at the present moment, it's difficult to say. We've only really got a couple of months' data and only the manufacturing numbers out there, but we're probably seeing growth pick up from what we saw in Q2. So again, that suggests the recovery gaining momentum and moving in the right direction, and that's beneficial for everyone.
Q2 was, what was GDP growth in Q2?
It was around the sort of 0.2, 0.3, yeah, which was very muted. It was very muted in a lot of the bigger economies, but we should see it accelerate a little bit in Q3.
My employment, though, as we all know, is a lagging indicator, but how much of a lag are we looking at? Because despite the pickup in activity, we're seeing firms and manufacturers continuing to shed jobs, and that's an even faster rate in August than the previous month.
Well, yes, and we might see this take a bit longer to filter through to meaningful job creation in the Eurozone. What we've seen in many cases is companies now, as they're starting to expand, they're starting to sweat their existing assets. They're starting to really sort of try and get as much out of the employment they've got. Economies like Germany, their unemployment rate's been very, very low. And that's because of the fact that they haven't cut jobs. Therefore, they might not likely to need to expand quickly in the
other
future.
Countries such as, obviously Spain and Italy, etc.
In those cases, we might see a little bit of job creation, but again, those countries and those companies are under increased financial pressure. And if that's the case, then that may mean they held off from additional hiring.